David's thumb hovered over the glowing screen as he scrolled through his social media feed in the dim light of his cramped apartment. He'd thought he was done with Aisha. After the divorce, he'd untagged her in every photo, muted her updates, and convinced himself that he'd moved on. But tonight, a single notification shattered that illusion. "Tagged you in a video," the app informed him. He tapped it without thinking. The video opened. Aisha, poised and radiant, stepped out of the backseat of a sleek black car into a grand courtyard. Twin fountains arced overhead, and manicured hedges framed a set of gleaming marble steps. A warm halo of sunset light tinted the scene gold. David's jaw dropped. "No way," he whispered, heart pounding. Memories of their modest one-bedroom flat, shared dinners in a cramped kitchen, and his bitter parting words flooded back. This couldn't be her. He tapped pause. Zoomed in. The woman's posture, the tilt of her head, the familiar curve of her smile, there was no mistaking it. Aisha had somehow become the owner of this estate. The video cut to a drone shot pulling back to reveal the outline of the mansion against a city skyline at dusk. David's fingers trembled. He tapped like almost on autopilot, then quickly unliked it. He didn't want the whole world to know he cared. Yet the seed of envy sprouted deep in his chest. "Buddy, are you there?" A text popped up from his friend Marcus, timed suspiciously well. David thumbed back. "Check this out." He forwarded the video link with no comment. Seconds later, Marcus replied. "Marcus, holy shit. Is that Aisha? Since when is she running a palace?" David exhaled, shaking his head. "Since never," he typed. "Looks like she's living rent-free now." A restless energy pulsed through him. He closed his laptop, paced the small living room, and dialed Aisha's old number on impulse. It went straight to voicemail. He let it ring twice before hanging up. How the hell did she pull this off? He muttered, flopping onto the sagging couch. The notification badge glowed accusingly. His phone buzzed again, more tags, more comments, friends congratulating her, news outlets linking to articles about a self-made entrepreneur who'd just acquired her first luxury property. "This can't stand," David said through clenched teeth, voice low and dangerous. He stared down at his rumpled shirt and well-worn jeans. An idea ignited in his mind. He would drive to her old neighborhood. He'd show her what real mockery felt like. And then, maybe, he'd get the satisfaction of seeing her expression when she realized he'd come for her. He grabbed his keys, threw on a jacket, and slapped his phone into his pocket. The city lights outside the window seemed to pulse in time with his rapid heartbeat. As he headed for the door, he didn't notice how small his apartment looked in the shadow of that video, how hollow his life felt in the glow of Aisha's newfound brilliance. The next morning, David sat behind the wheel of his aging sedan, engine idling in the parking lot of the strip mall that housed the coffee shop he'd inherited from his father. He stared at the weathered steering wheel, its leather cracked and faded. The pungent aroma of fuel and stale upholstery filled his nostrils. He dialed Marcus again. "I'm going to see her," he announced, voice tight. "Thinking of swinging by her old street, just to let her know I saw that video firsthand." Marcus's laughter crackled through the speaker. "No way, man. What are you going to say?" "Hello, ex-wife, sweet setup you've got here." "Exactly," David shot back. "Let her know I haven't forgotten." "Just don't get yourself arrested," Marcus warned. "Or worse, emotional damage. You know how she can stare you down." David smirked. "I can stare too." He hung up and pulled out of the lot, tires squealing against asphalt. The radio played an old breakup song, a cruel irony that made him scowl. As he navigated downtown traffic, his mind raced through potential one-liners. "Nice place you got here, shame you can't keep a marriage." Or maybe something crueler, aimed at her business successes. He rehearsed his best mocking laugh in the rearview mirror. Traffic thinned as he approached the district where he and Aisha had lived before. Cracked sidewalks gave way to tidy lawns and freshly painted houses, a stark contrast to his own run-down surroundings. He slowed at the stop sign before Aisha's old street, debating which gate to enter. Finally, he turned into a gravel drive that led to a low iron fence. On the other side, in the distance, he glimpsed structured hedges and the pink marble pillars he'd seen in the video. His pulse quickened. He popped the trunk, grabbed a half-empty coffee cup, and strode toward the gate, rehearsing his entrance. "Aisha," he'd shout. Then he'd wait for the startled reaction. He pictured her faltering smile, the tightness around her eyes when she realized who it was. It would be priceless. "Showtime," he muttered, stepping onto the pristine pathway. But as he approached the intercom, a guard in a crisp uniform appeared from around the corner, arms folded. "Can I help you?" the guard asked, voice polite but firm. David's breath caught. He lifted his chin. "I'm here to see Mrs. Aisha Mwangi. We used to be married." The guard's eyebrows rose. "Sir, is this about an invitation? You'll need an appointment. Please wait here." David's smile froze. "Appointment," he repeated, trying to hide annoyance. He glanced back at his car, longing to retreat. "No appointment," the guard continued. "No entry. Please step back." Something in David's gut twisted. He hadn't expected resistance so soon. He opened his mouth to protest when his phone buzzed. A message from Marcus read, "Abort mission?" David hesitated. For a heartbeat, he pictured himself walking away, returning to safety. But the thought of Aisha enjoying her triumph unchallenged provoked him. With a defiant grin, he slid past the guard before the man could react. His sneakers crunched on gravel. "Hey!" the guard called. David kept walking, adrenaline surging. He'd get his mockery one way or another. If she refused to face him like an equal, he'd find another way in. And once he did, she'd remember exactly who he was and what he'd lost. David stopped at the bottom of the marble steps, chest heaving. Up close, the pillars stood twice as tall as they appeared on screen, veins of gold running through the stone. The fountains on either side sprayed into jewel-toned basins. Palm trees rustled against the backdrop of a sprawling lawn that stretched toward the city skyline. He felt suddenly small, dwarfed by Aisha's success. The driveway curved behind him, revealing a line of luxury cars, a silver sedan, a midnight blue SUV, and, at the far end, a white convertible glinting in the sun. He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay," he muttered, pulling out his phone. He snapped a secret photo. "This is where you ended up," he wanted to say. Not bad for a girl who was always second-guessing herself. But guilt pricked him when he imagined Aisha's face. He swallowed, steeling his resolve. He moved directly to the front door's ornate knocker shaped like a lion's head. He lifted it and let it thud against the polished wood. The sound echoed in the silence. Inside, beyond the massive double doors, he heard soft voices and the clink of glasses. His mocking grin resurfaced as he pictured a party, or a business gathering, filled with her new friends. He'd burst in and deliver his line, "Careful, this is still my turf." Footsteps approached. The doors swung open with a soft whoosh, revealing a dimly lit foyer that led into a grand hall. Elaborate chandeliers hung overhead, ornate rugs lined the marble floor, and a sweeping staircase rose to a second-floor balcony. A stately woman in a tailored suit stood just out of sight at the foot of the stairs. She glanced at David with cool curiosity. For a moment, he thought she might ask him to leave. Instead, she raised an eyebrow. "May I help you?" she asked, voice calm, polite. David squared his shoulders. "I'm here to see Aisha Mwangi." He stopped. "We used to be married." The woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "Ms. Mwangi is expecting you. This way." David followed, heart hammering. Each step echoed. The hall opened onto a living area bathed in sunlight, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city skyline. Smartly dressed guests mingled, glancing at him with polite curiosity. He saw plaques on the walls: Entrepreneur of the Year, Top Innovator Under 30. The room hummed with quiet success. David fought the urge to frown. His mocking quip dissolved as he took in the scene. Aisha had built something remarkable. Something real. And here he was, barging into her triumph. Then he saw her through the crowd, poised, glowing in a tailored dress, her posture regal. She looked up, their eyes met, and the world seemed to still. He'd come to mock her, but now, he wasn't sure he could open his mouth. The moment stretched, silent and electric, until Aisha's voice cut through like a scalpel. David. The single word carried more power than any insult he'd planned. It was as if she'd reached across months of distance and found him. His lips parted, but words failed him. Instead, he swallowed and nodded. Her expression softened into something unreadable. I wasn't expecting you today. He cleared his throat, pain and regret flickering in his chest. Suddenly, memories surged back, raw and unfiltered. It was a rain-soaked afternoon in March. They'd sat across from each other at the kitchen table of their tiny rented townhouse. Aisha had worn her favorite blue cardigan, David had on his work uniform, tie already loosened. The room smelled of instant coffee and damp raincoats. I can't keep doing this, David had said, voice strained. He no longer recognized the man he'd become, bitter at financial struggles, resentful of Aisha's late nights at the art gallery, frustrated she wasn't supporting his dreams fast enough. Aisha's eyes brimmed with tears. I've been working 2 jobs. I thought you knew that. He'd slammed his fist on the table. It's never enough. When will you start earning real money? She'd flinched, hurt flashing across her face. I contribute in other ways, she'd whispered. I thought we were a team. He stood, anger twisting his features. I need more than hope and half-finished gallery shows. I need security. Aisha's tears had fallen freely then. So you're choosing someone else? Someone richer? He turned away, shoulders rigid. I'm choosing my future. Back in the foyer, the memory tightened around his heart like a vice. He remembered her soft sobs, the finality in her eyes as she gathered her things. The heavy click of the door closing behind her had echoed like a verdict. He'd thought he was making the right choice. That day, his pride had felt liberating. Now, standing in her mansion, he realized it had simply been cowardice. Aisha studied him silently, allowing the flashback to linger between them. Finally, she spoke, voice low, so you decided to show up unannounced? David forced a bitter laugh. I figured you'd enjoy some company from your past. Her lips quirked. Perhaps. Or maybe you want closure. He looked down at his scuffed shoes, unable to meet her gaze. I don't know what I want anymore. She nodded once, briskly. Follow me. He trailed behind as she led him up the sweeping staircase, each step a reminder of her ascent and his stagnation. At the top of the stairs, Aisha paused before a set of double doors. The corridor was lined with framed photos, Aisha in graduation robes, her ribbon-cutting ceremonies, snapshots of gala events where she stood shivering in designer gowns. Each photograph marked a milestone he'd never thought she'd reach. She opened the doors and stepped into a private study. Rich mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and awards in glass cases. A large oak desk sat by a window overlooking the fountain courtyard. Sunlight splashed across the polished surface. David hesitated in the doorway. He inhaled the scent of fresh leather and ink. It was impossible not to feel awe. Aisha closed the doors gently behind him. Welcome, she said softly. This is where I plan everything. He ventured forward, approaching the desk. A sleek laptop sat open, its screen displaying financial graphs and project timelines. A mug with her name in gold letters held pens arranged by color. On the desk lay a framed photo of the 2 of them, smiling on happier days. Why bring me here? He asked quietly, stepping closer. She perched on the edge of the desk, folding her hands in her lap. Because, she began, I want you to see how far I've come. Not so you can mock me, but so you can understand me. He pressed a hand to the frame, tracing his own reflection. I never believed in you, he admitted, voice thick. I thought you were chasing dreams that would leave us with nothing. Aisha's eyes shone with compassion rather than anger. I pursued those dreams because I believed in myself. And because I realized that security isn't given, it's built. David looked around, absorbing the evidence of her hard work, plans for expansion, notes on charitable initiatives, letters from partners praising her integrity. He felt an ache of regret so intense it brought tears to his eyes. I came here to humiliate you, he whispered, voice cracking. Instead, you've reminded me why I let you go. She stood and reached out, gently closing the distance between them. Closure isn't about revenge, David. It's about growth. For both of us. He bowed his head, the weight of his mistakes pressing down. I'm sorry, Aisha. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you for saying that. Now, would you like some tea? David managed a small, hopeful smile. I'd like that. As Aisha walked to the corner to pour hot water, David sank into the leather chair in front of the desk. Beyond the window, the fountain sparkled in the afternoon sun. He realized that crossing this threshold wasn't just about entering her home, it was about stepping into a new understanding of who they both had become. And as the first rays of light in that study warmed his face, he felt something he'd never felt before, genuine admiration. David lingered at the foot of the sweeping marble staircase, heart still hammering from last night's speech. The soft click of polished stone under his shoes echoed like a heartbeat in the grand foyer. Crystal chandeliers spilled opulent light, gilded moldings traced intricate patterns along high ceilings, and in every corner, guests paused mid-sentence to steal glances at the unexpected visitor. He'd intended to slip away quietly after breakfast, but curiosity, and a gnawing guilt, pushed him forward. Each step felt like trespassing deeper into a kingdom he'd once tried to undermine with his ridicule. A trio of elegantly dressed women paused near a bust of Aisha's grandmother, whispering animatedly. Woman 1, in a silk scarf, is that David Karim? The one who left her penniless? Woman 2, fanning herself with a designer booklet. It can't be. But look, he doesn't exactly fit the aesthetic. Woman 3, tapping on her tablet. He's here. She invited him. Aisha's hosting forgiveness breakfasts now, remember? David forced a smile, his cheekbones aching. He cleared his throat and approached them. David, softly, good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting. The women blinked, exchanged glances, then one inclined her head. Woman 1, Mr. Karim, yes? I'm Nadine. I attended your wedding years ago. David, voice low. You did? Nadine, smiling politely. Yes. You two made quite a pair. She was radiant even then. I never imagined, well. David's stomach nodded. I'm grateful for your kindness. He stepped away, weaving through clusters of guests. Every nod or whispered speculation reminded him how far he'd fallen, and how far Aisha had risen. Near the grand piano, a string quartet transitioned between pieces. A well-dressed businessman in his 40s, clutching a flute of champagne, beckoned David over. Businessman, warmly. David, right? I'm Samuel Onu. I partnered with Aisha on the Lagos expansion. I hear you two have history. David, Mr. Onu. I've heard about your successes. Congratulations. Samuel, chuckling. Thank you. But really, your presence here means more. Aisha speaks of you often. She values the lessons you both learned together. David's throat constricted. I'd value the chance to learn from her now. He excused himself and drifted toward a row of arched windows overlooking the fountains. Below, water danced in synchronized arcs, lit by submerged LEDs that glimmered like sapphires. A hush fell across the room as Aisha re-emerged from the back hall, now wearing a tailored emerald dress. Conversations fluttered back to life. David squared his shoulders and approached her. Her expression was calm, almost regal. Aisha, quietly, thank you for staying. David, I shouldn't have left so soon. Aisha, there's more to see. Would you like a private tour of the West Wing? He nodded, following her through a hidden door. As they passed into quieter corridors, he realized that wherever she led him, he was exactly where he needed to be, witnessing the magnitude of her achievement, humbled by her grace. The West Wing corridor was lined with portraits, Aisha as a child, in university graduation robes, at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and finally, standing alone on a windswept rooftop with a visionary's gaze. Each image told a chapter of her ascent, from uncertainty to unstoppable force. Aisha paused outside a door marked Strategy and Vision and pushed it open. Inside lay her private war room, floor-to-ceiling whiteboards covered in colorful diagrams, sticky notes clustered like constellations, and a large screen playing news clips about her latest venture. Aisha, gesturing, this is where the magic happens. David stepped inside, taking it all in. A blueprint for a future community-funded tech incubator dominated one wall. Elsewhere, deployment timelines for a rural access solar initiative competed for space with quotes like, if you build it with courage, they will come. David, odd, you built all of this by yourself? Aisha smiled wryly. Aisha, not entirely. I had mentors, angel investors, and an incredible team. But I'm the one who drew these lines and made the tough calls. She spun to a section of the board marked Chapter 1, Late Nights. Underneath, a hand-scrawled timeline tracked her side gigs, freelance design work, art gallery shifts, barista stints. Aisha, do you remember how many nights I didn't come home because I was too busy hustling? David closed his eyes. He remembered those evenings, her absence, his impatience. David, softly, I remember, he trailed off. She tapped a sticky note. Aisha, back then, I promised myself I would never settle for comfort if it meant sacrificing my dreams. She walked over to a small safe built into the wall. Retrieving a worn leather journal, she handed it to him. Aisha, in here are every obstacle, every doubt I faced. I want you to read it. David opened the journal. The pages brimmed with raw emotion, tears of frustration, sparks of excitement, lines crossed out in self-doubt and rebound. He felt his throat catch. Aisha, take your time. I'll be back in an hour. Left alone, David sank to the floor, journal open in his lap. He read entries about near bankruptcy, partnership betrayals, and the day she nearly walked away from it all. Then, the entry that changed course. March 15, 2023, I sold our small flat, took the proceeds, and founded Next Stage. Today, I choose action over fear. The weight of that choice settled on him like a mantle. He realized her empire was built on resilience he'd once scorned. When Aisha's voice softly announced her return, he closed the journal and looked up, ready to offer more than hollow apologies. Despite her invitation to stay for lunch, David's restless spirit compelled him to explore further. Just one more corridor, he'd told himself. But ambition can blur lines between admiration and intrusion. He slipped away from the drawing room under the pretense of finding the powder room. Instead, he turned down a silent hallway and came upon a staircase marked Service Only. Curiosity ignited, he descended. The air grew cooler as he neared the basement level. Fluorescent lights flickered above a janitorial closet, stacks of clean linens, and a row of industrial freezers. An uneasy hush filled the sterile corridor. David rounded a corner and nearly collided with two uniformed guards chatting over clipboards. Guard 1, startled, Hey, who are you? David, smiling nervously, Oh, sorry. I'm visiting. Just looking for the restrooms. Guard 2, eyebrow raised, They're upstairs, sir. Without waiting for a response, David slipped past them into a narrow service tunnel. He exhaled, adrenaline spiking. Just follow this to the greenhouse, he murmured. The tunnel branched, pipes overhead dripping water. At one bend, voices reached him, two staff members debating the menu for an upcoming gala. David froze, pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding. As they passed, he inhaled their words. Staff 1, I hope the chef remembers the caviar this time. Last gala was almost a disaster. Staff 2, don't worry, Aisha would never let it slip. The mention of her name felt like an anchor, reminding him he was far from home turf. He followed the sound of muffled music and emerged into the private greenhouse. Lush ferns, cascading orchids, and exotic palms created a humid oasis. At the center, a marble fountain bubbled, and above, a glass ceiling revealed patches of blue sky. David closed his eyes and inhaled the heady scent of jasmine and gardenia. This hidden paradise, kept secret from most guests, the greenhouse symbolized Aisha's commitment to cultivating life in every form. He lingered too long. A gardener rounding a planter spotted him. Gardener, stern sir, you shouldn't be here. David, mumbling sorry, I got lost. The gardener nodded curtly and motioned to the service door. Out here, please. Chastened, David retraced his steps through the tunnel and climbed the stairs back to the main wing. Each puff of effort reminded him he had no claim to this realm, yet his fascination had only grown. He emerged into the light of a side corridor near the library, resolved to confess his misadventure to Aisha rather than risk further trespass. A knock on the library door faded as David re-entered through a side entrance. Aisha stood inside, arms crossed, watching him with a mixture of amusement and reprimand. Aisha, teasing, were you touring the boilers? David, sheepish, I ended up in your greenhouse. She stepped forward, closing the distance. You know, most visitors stick to the grand hall. But I appreciate your curiosity. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I got carried away. She smiled kindly. No harm done. In fact, I think it's time you saw the heart of this house. She led him into the drawing room, where the quartet had resumed playing and a small audience gathered. At the far end, a velvet curtain concealed something large. Aisha tapped a button on a remote, the chandeliers dimmed, spotlights aligned on the draped shape. A hush fell. She cleared her throat. Many of you know me as an entrepreneur. But tonight, I want to honor the people who made this possible, my family, my team, and, she smiled at David. My first believer. The curtain swished open. Behind it stood a massive illuminated mural, a collage of photographs capturing Aisha's journey, with a central portrait of David and Aisha smiling at their modest wedding, framed by images of her early side hustles and culminating in the estate itself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guest 1, whispering, it's beautiful. Guest 2, she's honoring him? David's breath caught. Aisha stepped forward, hand on his shoulder. Aisha, voice steady, this mural represents resilience. Each image, joy, struggle, triumph, led us here. David, without your belief that day we married, I might never have found the courage to chase my dreams. This is as much your achievement as mine. Applause swelled. David's eyes shimmered with tears. He glanced around at the faces of influencers, investors, and friends, each reflecting admiration not just for Aisha's success, but for her humanity. He turned to Aisha. I'm honored. I can't believe you did this. She linked her arm through his. I did it because I believe we rewrite our stories through compassion, not contempt. They faced the mural together, silhouettes bathed in spotlight. In that moment, David realized that revenge had no place in her world, only recognition, reconciliation, and renewal. The celebration drew to a close around midnight, but the energy crackled as Aisha and David strolled along the terrace. Lanterns dotted the balustrade, flickering in the soft night breeze. Below, the fountains pulsed in rhythm, as though echoing the heartbeat of this estate. David, quietly, I still can't believe any of this is real. Aisha paused, gazing across the manicured gardens. It's as real as the work that built it. He looked at her, her calm strength, the luminous drive in her eyes, and felt a swell of pride. You make it look effortless. She chuckled. Only from afar. Then, more seriously, would you like to help me plan the next chapter? David's heart soared. I would, if you'll have me. She smiled, stepping closer. I will. But first, let me introduce you properly. She led him back through the foyer, where the last of the staff waited. One by one, she introduced David. Aisha, everyone, this is David Karim, my co-visionary. He shook hands with the caterer, the security chief, and the estate manager, each greeting him with respect rather than judgment. Finally, they reached the front door. Aisha slipped a key into his hand. Aisha, for whenever you want to return. David held the key, its weight warm in his palm. Thank you, he whispered. They stepped outside onto the drive. The moon cast silver streaks across the cars, and the city lights pulsed in the distance. Aisha slipped her hand into his, he leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. David, I'm home. She smiled, eyes bright. Welcome home. As they walked toward the waiting sedan, the mansion behind them stood not merely as a triumph of wealth or power, but as a testament to forgiveness, partnership, and the extraordinary places two people can go when they believe in each other. And in that softly lit night, viewers would understand that silent revenge, the one Aisha had orchestrated, was not in mockery or defeat, but in the quiet power of rising stronger together. A hush settled over the sunlit terrace as Aisha stepped into view, her silhouette framed by the city skyline. David stood by the marble balustrade, coffee cup in hand, heart thundering in his chest. The gentle breeze tugged at the hem of her tailored blazer, and for a moment, time stretched so thin that every breath between them felt like an eternity. He turned, their eyes meeting across the 6 feet of polished stone. In that instant, he saw not the woman he'd once scorned, but the embodiment of resilience and grace. Her gaze was steady, curious, and faintly amused, unreadable in its kindness. Aisha, softly you look contemplative. David cleared his throat, swallowing around a sudden lump in his throat. He set his coffee on a low table of hand-painted tiles. I was just thinking how many chapters we've rewritten. She stepped closer, the noise of the estate fading until all he could hear was the soft rush of the fountains below. Every new beginning requires turning a page, she said. He tilted his head, searching her eyes. It's strange, to look at you now and remember the nights you cried because I didn't believe. I see now how wrong I was. Aisha's lips curved in a gentle smile. Those tears seeded something beautiful. She paused. How do you feel? David inhaled, the scent of jasmine from the terrace planters mingling with the city air. Honest, he replied. Ashamed that I thought power was defined by what others said, rather than what you built. She nodded, extending her hand. May I? He hesitated, then placed his fingers in hers. The contact sent a spark up his arm. They say a look can speak volumes, he began, voice hushed. And in yours, I hear forgiveness, and an offer of partnership. Aisha's smile deepened. Eyes locked, she murmured, echoing the chapter title. It's in these moments we choose our next step. He drew her closer, careful and reverent, until their foreheads touched. Then I choose to rebuild alongside you. She rested her cheek against his. Together. As the sun dipped lower, painting the terrace in amber light, the camera would linger on that quiet embrace, two former strangers, now united by shared purpose and a love reborn in the crucible of change. Evening descended as David and Aisha returned to the grand foyer, where soft piano music floated like silk. A small gathering had formed, a mix of board members, longtime friends, and new allies, each curious about the unexpected reunion. David squared his shoulders, determined to show he'd shed his old arrogance. He moved toward a cluster of guests near the coat check, where a sharp-eyed investor named Chitty eyed him with thinly veiled skepticism. Chitty had been present at the divorce party, the one where David had toasted to Aisha's presumed downfall. Tonight, his expression brooked no nonsense. Chitty, coolly Mr. Kareem. I never expected to see you here. David offered a genuine smile. Mr. Okoro, Chitty. It's good to see you again. I'm here to support Aisha's vision now, not undermine it. Chitty's lips twitched. Words are wind. Why should any of us believe you've changed? A hush rippled as attendees turned. David squared his jaw. Because mockery fails in the face of progress. He motioned toward Aisha, who stood under the crystal chandelier, radiant. Look around. This empire was built despite every doubter, myself included. So tonight, I stand not as a critic, but as a student. A murmur of surprise rose. Chitty's eyebrow lifted. A student? Before David could elaborate, Aisha stepped forward. David's right, she said firmly. He spent the past 24 hours learning what it takes to run the Mwangi Foundation. His insights have already improved our community outreach plan. Gasps, then polite applause. Chitty studied David's face, noting the earnestness in his eyes. Impressive, he conceded. Welcome to the team, then. David inclined his head. Thank you. As the applause swelled, David realized that mockery, his once favorite weapon, was powerless here. Only respect, collaboration, and humility held weight. He caught Aisha's eye and saw gratitude there, not pity. His heart swelled with a newfound conviction he would earn his place, chapter by chapter, in this story of transformation. Aisha raised her glass. To unbreakable bonds forged in adversity. The guests toasted. And in that moment, viewers would sense the pivot, David's redemption arc, powered not by revenge, but by genuine change. Late that night, the gala's glow had faded, but the estate's private library remained lit, a cozy sanctuary of leather armchairs and towering shelves. Aisha led David inside, closing the heavy oak door behind them. Aisha, gesturing, I promised you tea. Here, please. A low table held a silver tray, fine porcelain cups, loose-leaf chamomile, and honeycomb with tiny wooden dippers. A warm amber steam curled from the teapot. David inhaled the soothing aroma. David, softly, this is perfection. He settled into a wingback chair. Aisha poured 2 cups. God released you from mocking me, now let this tea release you from your old self. David took a cautious sip. Warmth flooded his chest. He set the cup aside, crossing his hands in his lap. Your generosity astonishes me. She perched on the arm of his chair. I invited you here not out of pity, but out of belief that you still have the capacity to grow. She paused, gaze thoughtful. David, what do you want? He met her eyes. I want to be worthy of your trust. She nodded thoughtfully. Then let me invite you into my world fully. Tomorrow, I leave for Abuja to meet potential donors. I want you by my side, for introductions, negotiations, everything. David's heart leapt. Me? On the road with you? Her smile was radiant. I wasn't going to ask any of my board, only you. Because I value your perspective now more than I ever did. He exhaled, disbelief and pride mingling. I would be honored. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. It won't be easy. Long hours, tough questions, high stakes. Are you prepared? David set his jaw. Yes. Because for the first time, I'm not running from your success, I'm running toward it. Aisha's eyes softened. Then welcome to the journey. They clinked cups, sealing the invitation. And as the camera panned out, 2 figures illuminated by lamplight amid mountains of books, viewers would feel the promise of new adventures and the powerful intimacy of shared purpose. Dawn broke over the Abuja skyline, golden light slanting through the conference room windows as Aisha and David sat at the head of a long mahogany table. Representatives from 3 major foundations awaited their presentation, faces poised with professional skepticism. David adjusted his tie, pulse racing with anticipation. At his side, Aisha offered a reassuring nod. Together, they were about to pitch a joint initiative, microgrants and mentorship for women entrepreneurs across West Africa. Aisha led off, voice clear and authoritative, weaving stories of next-stage success and the Mwangi Foundation's impact. Her slides displayed real-world data, livelihoods launched, communities strengthened, lives transformed. Every statistic was anchored by human faces, women who'd started with nothing and built thriving businesses. As she spoke, David watched the donors' expressions shift from reserved to engaged. When the presentation ended, the lead donor, which had been notably silent, leaned forward. Lead donor, smiling Ms. Mwangi, Mr. Karim, this is inspiring. We're prepared to commit initial funding of $2 million. A murmur of approval swept the room. Papers rustled as the donors exchanged excited glances. David exhaled, feeling the weight of Aisha's confidence flow into him. Afterward, during the informal networking session, David found himself engaging one of the younger fund managers, a woman named Halima who'd admired Aisha's work online. Halima, enthusiastic David, your perspective on rural outreach was spot on. I'd love to hear more about your ideas for integrating technology and traditional markets. He smiled, settling into the role of collaborator. Thank you, Halima. I've seen farmers in my hometown use mobile platforms to bypass middlemen. Combined with targeted grants, we can scale that model across regions. She jotted notes, nodding. Let's set up a call. Across the room, Aisha watched them, pride shining in her gaze. When David returned, she slipped her arm through his. Aisha, quietly, you're a natural. He looked up, awed. I never believed I could find purpose in this world. She squeezed his hand. Purpose finds us when we cease mocking and start building. As they walked out onto the rooftop terrace, Abuja's skyline ablaze with sunset, the power had truly shifted. No longer the jilted ex with a mocking grin, David now stood as partner, equal in vision and passion. And viewers, witnessing that metamorphosis, would feel the thrill of redemption realized. 2 weeks later, back at the Lagos estate, tension crackled like electricity. David paced the marble hallway outside Aisha's office, mind racing. Earlier that morning, he'd given a flawed speech at a media roundtable, his nerves had cracked his voice, and his words came out muddled. Lay headlines had spun his stumble into a narrative of unpreparedness. He stopped at a framed photo of him and Aisha on the terrace, taken the night she invited him into her world. He inhaled sharply, guilt and shame warring in his chest. He needed to make amends, not just for the media gaffe but for every moment he'd doubted her. He knocked. Aisha's voice, calm but firm, called him in. Aisha, without looking up, come in. He entered, closing the door softly. Aisha sat behind her desk, reviewing quarterly reports. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her calm features. David, voice trembling. Aisha, I need to apologize for today's presentation. I let nerves get the better of me. You deserved better. She set the papers aside, folding her hands. Her gaze was patient. You were nervous. It's understandable. He swallowed, stepping forward. No, it wasn't just nerves. I realized I still carry that old fear of failure. And when I faltered, I felt worthless in your world. Aisha rose and crossed to him. David, success isn't linear. It's forged in missteps as much as in triumphs. He shook his head, urgency in his expression. I don't want excuses. I want to be the man worthy of standing beside you publicly, as you do privately. She studied him. What are you asking? He took both her hands. Teach me humility. Hold me accountable. And forgive me for the days I mocked you, without ever understanding what it truly takes. Her eyes glistened. She closed the distance and embraced him. You don't need to beg forgiveness. You've earned redemption by showing up, time and again. He exhaled, relief flooding his chest. Then let me prove it, not with words, but with actions. She pulled back, smiling. I know you will. She touched his cheek. Your desperation isn't weakness, it's proof you care. As they stood there, the golden light painting them in warmth, David realized his journey had come full circle. From mockery to partnership, from shame to purpose, every desperate plea had led him to this moment of true equality. And as the camera would linger on their entwined hands, viewers would sense that the most powerful transformations arise not from grand gestures, but from the courage to admit fault and the grace to forgive. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows as David walked into Aisha's private study, heart pounding. A plush armchair faced the window, behind it, shelves brimmed with awards and thank-you letters from communities she'd empowered. Aisha sat behind her desk, pen poised over a leather-bound contract. Aisha, steady David, you asked for clarity on how to stay. She slid the document across. These are my terms. David's eyes widened as he scanned the clauses, genuine, written apologies to every person he'd insulted publicly, 100 hours of hands-on community service with her foundation, and, most painful of all, a year of zero personal contact unless invited. David, voice tight, zero contact? Aisha nodded. Reconciliation begins with respect for boundaries. I need to see that your remorse is real, not performative. He swallowed. I understand. Aisha, sign here, she instructed, tapping the signature line. He picked up the pen, traced his name, and felt the weight of each letter. When he laid the pen down, Aisha closed the folder and offered a small, triumphant smile. Aisha, softly, I'm proud of you, for choosing accountability over excuses. David rose, heart heavy but resolute. Thank you for giving me this chance. As he left the study, the dusklight cast long shadows down the hallway, shadows he would step out of, one deliberate choice at a time. 2 weeks later, David arrived at the gala's back entrance, dressed in a simple suit and carrying a stack of donation envelopes. The grand ballroom sparkled with candlelight, chandeliers dripped crystals over round tables set with fundraising pamphlets and silent auction items. He paused, inhaled deeply, and approached the volunteer coordinator, a spirited woman named Naomi. Naomi, smiling, you're early. David handed her the envelopes. First donation, my own. Then I'll help wherever you need me. She nodded, handing him a clipboard. We could use help registering guests. For the next 3 hours, David greeted attendees, scanned tickets, and guided donors to tables. Each time someone thanked him for his service, he felt the sting of humility and the thrill of purpose. By the time Aisha took the stage, David had seen firsthand the human impact of her vision, single mothers starting tailoring businesses, young graduates launching tech startups, and elderly artisans reviving cultural crafts. After her keynote, Aisha found him backstage. Aisha, quiet pride, you did well. He shook his head. They did well, you gave them a platform. I'm just the messenger. She took his arm. Today, you were part of something far bigger than either of us. As they stepped into the glittering ballroom for the final toast, David realized that serving others had become the most profound way to honor her trust. The next morning, news alerts blared across screens worldwide. Aisha Mwangi honors ex-husband as lesson in forgiveness. David sat in his modest apartment, no mansion, no empire, and watched the viral clip. On stage at last night's gala, Aisha had held the microphone aloft. Aisha, on video tonight, I honor the person who taught me resilience, the person who doubted me, then chose growth. David Karim, thank you for showing me the power of accountability. The crowd roared, and a ticker scrolled across the live stream, lesson learned trending at 1. David's chest tightened. He leaned forward as comments flooded in, some praising their journey, others in disbelief that he'd earned this recognition. Aisha's words echoed in his mind, respect is won, not demanded. He stood, took a deep breath, and opened his laptop. On social media, he posted, David Karim, last night, I was honored by the most incredible woman I know. My path to redemption continues. Thank you, Aisha Mwangi, for teaching me to be better. He hit send, then smiled with genuine pride. His public stumble had become a testament to transformation, not weakness. A week later, a crisply addressed envelope arrived at David's door. Inside lay a single sheet of ivory stationery in Aisha's elegant script. Dear David, you have fulfilled our agreement with grace and humility. I forgive you wholeheartedly. As you rebuild your own path, know that my belief in you remains. With respect and gratitude, Aisha Mwangi. He folded the letter gently, breath-catching. Tears blurred his vision as he reread each word. He realized this wasn't a formal contract, it was an invitation to step fully into his own life, untethered from the shadow of their past. That afternoon, David sat at his small desk and drafted a business plan, a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs in his hometown, modeled on Aisha's foundation but tailored to local needs. As dusk fell, he sent the first proposal email to potential partners. Clutching Aisha's letter, he whispered into the quiet room, "This is for us both." At dawn, Aisha stepped onto her terrace, now empty and silent except for the gentle flow of the fountains. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and gazed at the city waking below. In that golden light, every spire and avenue seemed to hum with possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. David Karim, first partner committed. Tomorrow we launch in Kaduna. She smiled, heart swelling with pride. Their journeys, once divergent, now ran in parallel streams, each fueled by the power of forgiveness and shared purpose. Turning toward the rising sun, Aisha raised her arms as if embracing the future. The camera would pull back to reveal the mansion glowing in the new light, the city beyond, and herself at the center, a woman who transformed mockery into momentum, betrayal into bond, and an old love into an enduring partnership. As the final notes of the orchestral score faded, viewers would understand, true triumph lies not in silent revenge, but in rising together, stronger, wiser, and united in possibility. The end.